I hope everyone got some jump start, some coffee, and some breakfast. But we're very happy that you're moving up here to take a look at the discussion we have on offer this morning. I want to welcome everyone to the 19th edition of the Toronto Global Forum. My name's Shelley Carroll, and it's a great honor this morning. Back at City Hall, I serve as the Mayor's Champion on Economic Development and Culture. I have an interesting perspective on it, though, because I also serve, I wear many hats. I'm also the chair of the budget process for the mayor, and I also chair the police board, which is a very interesting area in terms of all the innovation we've been discussing for the last few days. It's another area of potential, and so I'm able to bring all those hats to bear in some of the future innovation that we'll all be able to do. So I'm very pleased this morning to be able to moderate the Latam panel discussion. The city's very proud of the fact that they've been able to use the Toronto Global Forum and to partner with IEFA to really play a vital role in what needs to be a global dialogue, now more than ever. But really, it should always be the case, and it's our position at the City of Toronto that should always be the case in every order of government, because we all have a role to play. Especially now, we're in a rapidly changing world. The global trading patterns really are all being redrawn, and that's why I'm really pleased with the guests we have to speak to today, because they can help us to unpack some of that change. We think cities should be a part of that discussion because we do play a key role in realizing what are national dreams. Your major cities in every nation really have to be in lockstep, or it actually doesn't get delivered. We're a clear example of that. Toronto, being the fourth largest city in North America, is home to 94,000 small and medium-sized enterprises. Our SMEs make up 85% of business in the city, and they're very much a part of the trading activity. It's long been our greatest export market here is our SMEs and the work that they do. The current U.S. administration is making that a little difficult for them on a number of fronts, but we're not alone in that. We know that globally. It's why I will mention, just before we begin to speak to our special guests, Toronto has launched something called Trade TO. And what that is an ability. SMEs sometimes struggle to take part in diversification initiatives, to elevate into the discussion that is global. And so Trade TO is about making sure that they have the tools and the connections that we can provide them with, so that they do become a part of our diversification initiatives. And so some of them will be monitoring on IEFA TV, which is another place you can be watching this discussion. Some are watching this morning. So, on to our guests. Latin America. Why Latin America? Why give it its special place in discussion? Well, for Canadian investment across Latin America, that activity exceeds $72 billion. That demonstrates the depth and the breadth of our economic engagement in the Latin American region, particularly with the nations that we're meeting with today. And it also aligns, that activity aligns with the Mayor's Economic Action Plan, which of course asks us all to explore diversification wherever we can beyond our border to the south, because while that makes up 70% of our economy, it is now really a volatile situation there for the time being, for at least for the next 38 months. And so our neighbors further south become very interesting to our enterprises here at home. So we're not starting from scratch. We have great relationships, and that's why I'm very pleased to introduce our guests this morning. First of all, His Excellency Ambassador Franco, who is the ambassador from Brazil to Canada. And he has been in the Foreign Service and aid to his nation for a long time. And so I'm looking forward to his insights. And we also have with us this morning the ambassador from Chile to Canada, and that is His Excellency Juan Carlos Garcia. Perez Darce. So, gentlemen, you both have long careers in your nations, but also in the space of global discussion. And so you've also been government members, acting as ministers. You know what it's like to sort of sit in my shoes and have to realize initiatives. And so this morning, I think you can really help us with this. Latin America has become increasingly a strategic partner. In the case of Chile, a direct free trade agreement, and Brazil through the Mercosur. And so I'm wondering if first we could unpack, how are the existing frameworks helping us at this point? The CPTPP and Canada's bilateral trade agreements, they do create tangible benefits, but are they still able to function? What sort of ground are we on now? Ambassador França, maybe you want to go first? Yeah.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank you so very much, Carroll, for this invitation. And thank, of course, the City of Toronto and IEFA for having me here today. And I would like to acknowledge the presence here of the Ambassador of Argentina to Canada. Thank you so very much, Ambassador. And the Consul General of Brazil in Toronto, Ambassador Enio Cordeiro, a master from the Brazilian Foreign Service, former ambassador to Buenos Aires, to Mexico, to Norway. Maybe he should be here with the Ambassador Gramulli as well to help us on this panel, because he's a real expert in regional integration. We in Brazil, our main framework for regional integration is our stake in Mercosur. Mm-hmm. So what we're thinking about, about Canada and Brazil relationship is to take, let's say, advantage from this agreement that it's under negotiation. We started negotiating it in 2018, and after 8 or 9 rounds of negotiations, it stopped for a while, but the negotiations will resume soon. We have already 5 chapters, already negotiated and, let's say, ready to sign. I think it's a workforce, indigenous people, gender equality, market access, regulatory affairs, and let's say best practices. And of course, we have now procurement, we have services, and let's say more serious business to close, maybe more difficult, but we trust in negotiation. There is a will from the Canadian government in closing this agreement, and I'm pretty sure that will help even small and medium-sized companies to do business, not only with Brazil, but of course with the Mercosur partners.
And Ambassador Garcia, Chile, while not in the Mercosur, is a very open nation. And so we're still able to foster collaboration, but uniquely it can be a more direct relationship currently?
Well, absolutely. Chile is a country, we call this isolated country by our nature, the ocean, the Andes. But we decided many years ago open our economy to the world. And today we have free trade agreement with almost the 80% of the global GDP. Maybe we are one of the most open economy in the world. But something significant in this context, Canada is our first foreign investor with $40 billion. That represent 15% of the foreign investment in Chile. That means a lot because we have a free trade agreement since 1997, and since this period to today, our trade relationship are growing and diversifying our economy in different aspects. That's very interesting because our institutional relationship is now between Canada and Chile, both governments support our trade relationship in long-term investment, and that is our credential in the world, and is the principle of our relationship with Canada too.
That is very interesting. A 40-year relationship is time flies. And really almost the entirety of your career. And so we're seeing it. Beyond trade, because we have had at the Toronto Global Forum, there are institutional partners here as well, and so that becomes an interesting part of the conversation. Are there collaborations going on in nations between institutions, post-secondary, in aid of innovation, so that as we move towards AI adoption and quantum computing, is there an institutional partnership possible with the nations? Maybe Ambassador Garcia, you'll go first on this one.
Yeah, well, the natural collaboration between Chile and Canada was in energy mining, of course. But today we're exploring diversify our economies. Chile is really well connected with fiber optic cables, submarine cables to United States, to Asia. And we are part of the CTPP that gives us the opportunity to diversify our economy, for example, for data centers or another products. And you can imagine this kind of investment that needs a long-term revenue, a solid structure. It's not only technology. It's a friendship framework. When we respect the law, we respect the free trade agreements, we respect the friends. And of course, when the friends are in problem, you are closer to your friends. And that's our politics with Canada. The other thing is important for us is maybe the first investor that opened the investment for Canadian was the pension plans. Almost 7, 8 pension plans are investing in Chile. And when you have pensions are investing in our country, that means something for the Canadian, no? When you invest, when your pension plans are in Chile, since 20 years, I guess pension plans arrived in Chile, was the first country in Latin America where the Canadian pension plans invest in Chile, and maybe it was one of the first in the world. That gives you the warranty of a serious country, and that gives you the opportunity now to open investment in new economies, and the new technologies are the new economy, and our country give that certitude that this world needs today.
Yes, yes. So, Ambassador França, are there key trade reforms that Canada should be looking at now, that investors should watch for, or political situations in Latin America that investors should watch for or capitalize on?
Okay, look, I think that Latin America, it's, let's say, a good environment for foreign investment. My dear friend Juan Carlos Garcia told us about, the presence of institutional investors, Canadian institutional investors in Chile. In Brazil, we have the same reality, and I understand that Latin American countries offer a vast array of sectors and business opportunities that, of course, can be of interest from not only institutional, but also private businessmen from Canada. From the point of view of reforms, I would like to stress that although in many countries in the world, and Brazil is no exception, we face a high degree of polarization. Since 2018 in Brazil, we have been, following a very clear path of reform. In 2018, under the President Michel Temer, we had the labor reform that we streamlined, let's say, the labor relations and made it easier, for private companies, let's say, to hire the workforce. Then in 2019, under the President Bolsonaro's administration, we have the pension reform. It was so important. And then recently, last year, you have a historical reform under President Lula's third-term administration. That was the tax reform, which will bring, much more concise environment and then much more clear, on taxation, will make it easier for the companies, let's say, to get their taxes collected. It will simplify the Brazilian tax system that was somehow complicated between, let's say, provincial level, that we call state level in Brazil, because we call states, on municipal level and of course federal level. It will simplify a lot. It's a reform that was under the consideration of the Brazilian Congress for almost 40 years, and now President Lula succeeded in making it a reality. And now we start discussing the civil service reform that will, let's say, streamline, the civil service in Brazil. Will bring the state, let's say, much more, lean and much more, let's say, efficient. So I think that no matter what political party is in power in Brazil, we are following, the Brazilian Congress, that is a reflection of the Brazilian society, is in his clear path of reforms, that will, just to conclude it will lead to a better investment environment, not only for the Brazilian companies, but of course for foreign investors as well.
It sounds like we should be coming to learn in terms of Canadian reforms. Ambassador Garcia, I think you've undergone the same thing in Chile, trying to simplify permitting, for instance, that sort of thing. That's often a criticism leveled at Canada because there's so much distinction between the 10 provinces. We make the joke that is sometimes not so funny when investors come, which is that Canada has so many free trade agreements abroad. The only one we don't have is the Canada to Canada free trade agreement between provinces. We're simplifying that now. Have you found that by simplifying those things, it makes a better investment environment? And have you found the magic way to do it? Should we be coming to learn how to simplify and reform those in Latin America?
It's not magic, it's a lot of work. We just approved a new law to reduce the permit system in our country, merging different permits. Maybe almost 400 permits are existing in our country. And the idea from the next month and for the next years is reduce the time for permits between 30 and 70%. This is really ambitious. It's a consensus between all the political spectrum. That is important too, because the priorities in our country today, we are in elections now. Our elections are in November and December. Of course, our candidates are completely different, but the priorities are the same. Growth, employment, security, and modernize the government. Right. And that means for one part, reduce the permits, and we are really proud of this first step. We know the next government must do new step in that way too. But at the same time, in this context, the countries must be more ambitious, and the companies that doesn't understand not only the geoeconomical context. Enterprises must understand the geopolitical context too. In that way, for example, with Argentina, the ambassador is here, with Chile and Brazil, we are developing a bioceanic corridor. Right. To connect our products to the Atlantic ports and to Pacific ports. And in Chile, we're developing ports to increase in 2 million TEUs in 5 years and maybe 6 or 9 million TEUs in 10 years. Because we understand that reduced permits need to new infrastructure, new connections, new relationship with the country that we live together. And for the future, this kind of measures could be more attractive, not only for the foreign investors, could be give more stability to the countries too.
Yes.
I'm architect. I'm foreign ministers of infrastructure. I'm convinced the role of infrastructure to build relationship between countries and between economies. These kind of things that we are doing with 3 countries today, even if we have some differences in our local strategies, we are partners in the global challenges too.
I'm hoping that's true in Canada as well. That the concept that no matter the party politics that plays out in an election, at the end of the day, the nation and the businesses within that nation have the same goals. And you're right, it's growth, expansion, security. Are there examples of really successful investments, Canada to Brazil, that demonstrate the bilateral cooperation that's been possible and will continue to be, even though the trade negotiations are somewhat still ongoing? Are there good examples of investment? I understand, for instance, that Brazil is one of our potash sector's best customers. Are there other examples where the cooperation is ongoing?
Yes, I think there's a lot of opportunities in Brazil and good examples of cooperation. Potash that you mentioned is very important. We, the Brazilian agribusiness sector, rely heavily on potash imports. We import 96% of our needs of potash last year. And this year, we will increase this dependency to 97%. Potash accounts for almost 50% of Canadian exports to Brazil. And let's say you are second to none when we think about our suppliers of potash. That it, I might say, is crucial for the Brazilian agriculture. I don't know if you have the dimension of the Brazilian agri-sector, but let's say we are the largest producer of coffee. Although the Colombians say the Colombian coffee is better than the Brazilian, we are the largest, you know.
We could debate that. We only have so much time. That's a long debate.
I don't know how many of you here in this room had orange juice for breakfast, but 8 out of 10 glasses of orange juice that are served in the world came from Brazilian oranges.
Wow.
8 out of 10. In beef and pork and poultry, we are, giant producers as well. And a good example, for example, is here in Alberta, JBS, that is a Brazilian protein giant that has a very important process plant in Brooks, Alberta. Just to give an example about this cooperation, recently, due to this, let's say, geopolitical changes that we recently have, Alberta beef replaced American beef in the Costco stores in Mexico. It was news, that was broadcasted in Globe and Mail. This Alberta beef that is now in Costco's, stores in Mexico are processed by this Brazilian company, JBS. So, it's Alberta beef with a Brazilian touch. In Mexico, that's Latin America as well. So that's a good example. Another example that's very successful, it's Embraer, the Brazilian airplane factory. But the planes of Embraer are designed and are built in Brazil. And I think about, these regional jets, the E195 or E2 that flies in Canada, flies in the United States, and all over the world. They are designed in Brazil, they are built in Brazil, but the avionics and the engines come from Montreal, it's space and aviation cluster. Turbines from Pratt & Whitney, avionics, for Honeywell and a lot of companies. So I think that's a very good example. And although we export a lot of airplanes to Canada, we import aircraft as well. From Diamond Aircraft in London, Ontario, for example, that are a big success. This turboprop small planes. Small compared, of course, to the jets that Embraer export to Canada. So I think there is a lot of cases of success, and I think not only potash, but I would mention beef, and I would mention, of course, Embraer. Not to forget, of course, the very large investment that Vale, the Brazilian mining company, has in Manitoba.
Very interesting. Ambassador Garcia, do you want to add to that answer? If not, I have another question for you.
I forgot to go to the question. I would like to share a good example of the relationship between our countries. And Chile begins to build a relationship with Canada in mining. Tech Resources have one of the big copper mining in the world there.
Mm-hmm.
But now, Canada is investing now in Chile in agriculture. It's a good example because Chile have all the expertise of our lands, and we have all the connection with Asia.
Yes.
We're the main export of cherries to China, for example. But Canadian companies know the technology.
Right.
And Canada is now looking for, of course, diversify their economy to other continents, Asia
Yes.
too. You have now experience with Asia in Chile.
Right.
You can use your friends to expand your economy and to arrive to new continents. Because like Embraer here, like your companies in Chile, the relationship between Latin America and Canada is based in the image of Canada in our countries.
Right. Right. So, for instance, if you want to have a business-to-business discussion, if they're diversifying into Chile, then you can actually help them to begin to have their business-to-business discussions with Asia through the relationships you have.
Absolutely. The Canadian reputation in Latin America is really strong. And it's something that is not easy, that takes time
Yes.
to build. The relationship between countries takes time to be built. Chile is, for the last 20 years, is a safe harbor for Canadian investment.
Yes.
Now, Chile, Brazil could be a great platform for expanding your investment in the rest of the world because we are really well connected. And is a new way to understand the trade.
Exactly.
In this moment.
Exactly. So, gentlemen, in our last few minutes, we'll maybe turn to advice. I opened by talking about some of the small and medium enterprises that may not be already active in trade, but through Trade TO are now looking to expand. So, do you have, for a Toronto-based business that's now looking to and considering expansion into your country, do you have some concrete advice? What's the one piece of advice you'd give them now as they embark on that journey into Brazil, into Chile, and really, with Ambassador Martinez here, into Latin America writ large? Is there a one best piece of advice for them as we begin? I don't want to leave out Argentina because, of course, one of those could be to consider going to the next forum in Buenos Aires that IEFA will hold early next year. But specifically in Brazil, what should they be on the lookout for if they're looking to come now?
Thank you, Mrs. Carroll, for this question, very important. First of all, I'd like to stress that under the Mercosur-Canada trade agreement, there is one chapter that deals about small and medium-sized enterprises. I mean, it's under consideration, and there is a great deal of attention from the Mercosur countries. I speak in the name of Mercosur because Brazil is the chair of Mercosur this semester. But I think that, of course, my opinion is the same from all the partners we have in Mercosur about this importance of small and medium-sized enterprises. What I would, let's say, suggest for Toronto-based companies that would like to do business in Brazil is, first of all, to resort to the chambers of commerce. here in Toronto, for more than 50 years, you have already established here the BCCC, the Brazilian-Canada Chamber of Commerce. In Montreal and São Paulo, you have the CCBC, the Chamber of Commerce Brazil-Canada. They are very important. They can, help really, these companies in Toronto, that are based here in Toronto, let's say, to access the Brazilian market. And there is a lot of incentives in Brazil as well for some kind of sectors, the specific sectors. For example, data centers. There is, let's say, tax credit programs from the Brazilian government that can, gives incentives for foreign companies to establish themselves in Brazil, creating jobs and, of course, mutually beneficial, outputs for both countries, not only Brazil, but of course for the investing country. So what I suggest is to do, let's say, a due diligence through this Chamber of Commerce.
Yes.
Look for the the niches and opportunities, and do business with all countries in our region as well.
Excellent. And in Chile, Ambassador Garcia, your best piece of advice?
Yes, I would like to tell you a story. When I was Minister of Infrastructure in Chile, I had meetings with companies from all the world, Canadians too, but I never had a meeting with a CEO of a Canadian company.
With the CEO?
Yes, the Canadian CEO doesn't travel. It's not so far away. It's 10 hours in a direct flight between Toronto and Santiago in Air Canada. You need to travel. You need to visit the country. You need to meet the authorities. We have an excellent lobby law, very transparent. You are protected in the meeting with the authorities. You need to meet in the different chamber of commerce in our countries. You need to discuss with them because there are many opportunities that you can identify there. I told that to my dear friend Goldie Hyder. I invited him to Chile. He visited Chile and Argentina too in May. And he was convinced about that. And he's organizing a new travel to Chile next year with a new government, of course. You are all invited to with him. It's important, the personal relationship. It's not only permit law. It's not only free trade agreement. It's not only numbers. Between our countries, the personal relationship gives stronger our economy. And in the actual context, it's crucial to expand your economy in the rest of the world.
That is excellent advice, and it taps into isn't it? I think you hear applause probably from people who are here from outside of Canada because they're probably reflecting their same thoughts. I sometimes in meeting with international partners realize that Canada, in some respects in our business practice, we have a phobia about that. And in fact, it's the most constructive way to start the relationship. But, should we travel? And oh my goodness, and what will people think? And in fact, it's a productive way to start the collaboration. Technology can only go so far. Relationship building happens this way. Thank you so much. This is the start of good relationship building for me. I hope it is the same for my guests here. Thank you all. Ambassador from Argentina, Ambassador Martinez, Ambassador Garcia, Ambassador França. Thank you so much.